author. He's also an associate professor of medicine at Brown University Medical School. He's written several books on Sharia and jihad, the legacy of jihad, Sharia versus freedom, the legacy of Islamic totalitarianism. Welcome to the show, Andrew. Thanks for calling.
Thanks, Sam. Thanks for having me on.
Now, I know you're upset because, you and I email, and you don't like the fact that the media is portraying Putin as not attacking ISIS. Is that right?
Well, that's part of the problem. I think there's a larger problem because not only have the Russian airstrikes been against ISIS, and there's now been repeated strikes against ISIS. The entire series of attacks have all been upon jihadist groups, and the fact is that you see all these so-called pundits getting on Fox News and using weasel words like they're attacking allies or they're attacking rebels. These are all jihadist organizations. The Russians have attacked jihadists that are closest to where the Alawite areas are and the government areas are for Syria. But in fact, they also have attacked ISIS. And it's becoming Orwellian in the reporting. Look, Sam, the fact is I'm just going back to a piece that I had written at the end of 2012 when I was trying to sort all this out for myself when there was talk back then about some involvement in Syria. And it really boils down quite simply to this. The choice in Syria has always been, since 1947, when they actually started to have a free and fair election, which the Muslim Brotherhood was winning hands down, the choice has always been between either Muslim Brotherhood-type jihadist groups and sympathizers, which is the mass of the Sunni Muslim population in Syria, or the type of Ba'athist, Assadist family regime that is still in power there. Those are your choices. When I hear delusionists talking about rebels, they're talking about jihadists. And in fact, the secular population in Syria has long been largely associated with the rather odious Ba'ath movement and the Assad in Syria. Them's your choices.
And they've chosen. They chose to back a certain type of jihad. So let me ask you this. What do you think about the 9 soldiers that we trained for, $500 million or whatever we spent over there?
I mean, it's common sense tells you that it's laughable. Common sense also punctuates, in Yiddish we call it seichel, what Donald Trump is saying, that this is basically a morass, although he hasn't quite used that word, and that to be sorting out who we should be supporting at great expense of treasure and maybe even U.S. blood is patently absurd. I am not an apologist for what Putin is, some strange combination of czarist Russian imperialism and neo-Bolshevism, communism. That has nothing to do. We don't have to be an apologist for Putin to understand that if he's bombing jihadist groups, even if it's in the course of propping up the odious Assad regime, it's not necessarily such a terrible thing.
So you're happy that he's over there. What about him positioning?
I'm not happy in the sense that we don't need another dark force imposing itself in that region. That's not necessarily a good thing, but that's a separate question from our involvement and our propping up other kinds of dark jihadist forces there. He's propping up the Assad regime. And in terms of local geopolitics, the Russians may honestly believe that that's to their benefit in terms of their own problems with Sunni jihadism. That's not unreasonable from their perspective. On the other hand, that doesn't mean that Putin and the Russian regime, have suddenly become benevolent to mankind.
Exactly. And what does that do to our position in the world? Well, of course, we ceded that. It's not that he took it; we ceded it.
But Sam, I'm much less concerned with Putin attacking and destroying jihadists for whatever his reasons are than with us doing nothing about Russian airplanes apparently buzzing the coast of California and Alaska. That's of grave concern to me. And I don't see anything practical being done about that. I don't see anything practical being done about Putin's, threatening the Baltic states, or us not doing anything to give missile defense systems, et cetera, to who are legitimate allies in Eastern Europe.
But I would say they're all of a piece. But they're all of a piece. The idea that he's attacking our so-called, and I agree with you, our chosen jihadists, our favorites, right? He's attacking them. It's a proxy. It's a proxy war against the United States. And lest you have any doubt, he's been buzzing our airspace on the other coast here. So on my coast, Sam, thank you very much.
We have to separate these proxies. I'm sorry to get into this sort of weeds, but we have to separate these proxies. Again, and we have to prioritize what's really important and what's really a bad policy and what's really a good policy. I don't think we should be in the business of propping up jihadists any place. And we've lived through that historically now, and it's come back to be a bad policy overall. But on the other hand, that's not an excuse for doing nothing about militaristic, Soviet attempts to embarrass us, to threaten us. By going into U.S. airspace or near U.S. airspace. Those are totally separate issues.
I conflate the two. I look at them as very similar.
Well, perhaps with this administration, I will cede you that point, that this administration is so feckless that it's just part of their overall fecklessness. But
let me ask you this.
Terms,
let me ask you this. They would have to be just completely related, because our reaction to Putin in Syria, when he walks into our base and says, you guys need to clear out because we're taking over here, our reaction to that will dictate how he behaves on our western coast.
No, I think there's legitimacy to that, but it still begs the question of having a rotten policy in terms of trying to parse out jihadist groups in a morass. And doing this over and over and over again.
Which is why we have no policy.
Right.
And why we just wasted millions and millions of dollars training guys who are just going to run off and join the next front.
I'm sorry, I thought there were huge problems with the Bush II administration policy, but they've even gotten worse. I will grant you that under Obama, because he clearly must have an ideology where he wants to actively diminish us. I think, unfortunately, some of the things Bush did diminished us by default. But Obama is doing it actively. Yeah.
Andrew Bostom, thanks so much for coming on the program. You can find him at, I don't know where to find you on the web. Give your website.
Just www.andrewbostom.org/blogs. Best place to go.
There we go. All right. Thanks so much for coming on. I'll be right back. Stay tuned.